Hello and welcome to episode 158 of our SAP on Azure Video Podcast. Today is August 31st, and together with Robert and Goran, we're here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So in previous episodes, we often mentioned DSAG, the German-speaking SAP user group. This is probably not only because Goran and I are both located here in Germany, but I am also hosting the SAP on Microsoft Azure working group within DSAG. However, did you know that ASUG was founded over 30 years ago and has more than 100,000 members across thousands of organizations? It's actually the biggest SAP user group in the world. So for today's episode, I'm really happy to have the opportunity to talk with Geoff Scott, the CEO of ASUG. Welcome, Geoff.
So, gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. To kick it off, could you maybe quickly introduce yourself, Geoff?
Well, I do want to ask you both a question this morning, which is why is it 158 before you've gotten around to ASUG? I'm very depressed by that it's taken 157 episodes for you to say, you know what, we'd like to hear ASUG's point of view on this. So, but I'm glad I'm here today. So I'm glad.
No. Now we are starting for real, you know.
but actually, to put this into perspective, we didn't have anyone from DSAG joining yet. So you're the first representative.
Then I'm good. I'm good. And as we were saying, when we're recording this, DSAG's annual Congress is a few weeks away, and I'm going to be in Bremen for that wonderful event. I'm looking forward to seeing all of my German colleagues in Bremen and spending some time talking about the subject that's near and dear to our hearts. Microsoft, no SAP, no SAP, no Microsoft. So both are very good. So you asked about me. Yes. I am Geoff Scott. I am the CEO of ASUG. I have been the CEO of ASUG for 9 years. It's a long time, almost 10 now. It seems like and feels like an eternity. And prior to that, I was a CIO in fashion. I spent some time in fashion industry. I spent some time in food, and I spent some time in manufacturing. And through all of that, much of it to do with SAP. And so I've been around SAP a long time as both a customer and now as part of ASUG. And what I really have always loved about SAP is its commitment to the customer community, its commitment to making sure that all of us who are using it every day are using it in the best way possible. And that's really what ASUG is here to do, is to help the North American customer base really get the most value out of this immense technology investment that they've made in SAP. And that's what excites me and brings me into these conversations each and every day. And so I'm thrilled to be with both of you. I'm a huge fan of Microsoft. And not only have I purchased SAP licenses over many, many years, I'm also an ardent Microsoft fan as well. So this is an intersection of some great conversation. So thank you for having me on.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming to our show. I quickly want to take another look at ASUG, because actually when I looked up some of the statistics, I was actually really surprised how big ASUG is in the meantime. I read some anecdote how it started as a very small group of customers coming together, like in 1991 or something like that, and now in the meantime, really, I think that the number was 130,000 members that you have in the meantime. So you have a very, very strong presence, obviously, in North America there.
You know, a number of years ago, over 30 years ago, as you pointed out, a number of early adopters of SAP got together. And at that point in time, much of the documentation of SAP was still written in your native tongue, not ours, German. Yes. And so, and sometimes, I know you find this hard to believe, the translation doesn't quite carry. And so a lot of these users early on, kind of came together to say, what does all this mean? And if we all go back to our early days of 5-letter table names and column views and field names, none of that made any sense to us Americans. And so ASUG was born out of the need for this group of customers to come together, and very similar to how DSAG, and I believe that there's well over 40 other user communities globally representing SAP. So what I think about SAP and what makes me excited is this isn't just about this company or an organization called SAP that makes software. It's also about a whole lot of professionals who have chosen to make their careers in SAP. I think about both of you. While you both work for Microsoft, you're very heavily invested in SAP. I think about the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of other professionals throughout the world who are also equally connected to SAP. And so we inside of ASUG use this word ecosystem. And I think, and what I've said to the SAP leadership over all these years is it's important that we have a really vibrant ecosystem. We got to 50 years and SAP celebrated its 50th anniversary last year. I would like to get to the next 50 years. And the only way that that happens is with all of us as professionals working really hard every day to make sure this technology works and it delivers outcomes and business objectives for the organizations that purchase the licenses and subscriptions. And so what I really want to have happen is when we identify potential future professionals in the colleges and universities, they're excited to come into this SAP ecosystem, join these communities, in their college careers, and we hold on to them for dear life until they retire, 30, 40, 50 years later. Of course, I'm thinking about all this great biotech that's happening, and we're all going to live forever. So that means we can spend even more time in these SAP communities working for longer periods of time to drive value. So that's how I think about it.
No, but actually, you touch on a very good point, because I think with SAP, and I think this is really unlike in a lot of other industries. Once you get in touch with SAP and you really breathe and work with SAP, then you're always SAP. So you're really
right.
Get into it, and it's a fantastic community. It's great, and as you said, I am really looking forward to DSAG, to the ASUG events, to really come together and collaborate, meet other colleagues, other partners there. So I think it is a very, very strong SAP community, and if we can really start with the folks from the university, get them on board to SAP, and maybe also a little Microsoft, I think that's exactly where we see a fantastic community.
I think that, it takes a lot of practice to be an amazing SAP professional, right? I mean, I know that through various pieces and phases of SAP's life, they've tried to talk about taglines like run simple, and all of this is really simple. And I actually believe it's not all that simple, that what we're dealing, business processes are complex things. Most of our customer base are, and while I think that customers are becoming smaller over time in the sense that, SMB is now starting to use SAP, but the organizations that benefit from SAP are big multinational global organizations solving challenges in multiple countries, multiple currencies, multiple languages, trying to be efficient at what they do, which means their business processes are complicated. And they need some software that can handle those complexities. And I can't think of any better software than SAP that can do that. So I actually think complexity is good, because it's what drives this ecosystem, and trying to take all this complexity and make it as easily executable as possible is what I think you guys try to do from your podcast perspective, and what all of us in the community are trying to do each and every day. And that's what I think brings us all together.
Yeah. And I mean, especially this point about really complex global structures. I mean, Microsoft is also a huge customer of SAP. We run an ERP system, we run S/4HANA systems. So and this is really globally. So not only for the US, but really for all the different countries. And I think that's really something where SAP is absolutely unique, where they have this fantastic product, and everyone can use it.
I'll share a story with both of you. I'm going back a number of years in my career, and we were implementing in a South American country, and we were having these really intense conversations, and we were up here in North America on telephone calls. I'm going back a number of years down in South America, and we were talking about these business processes, and we'd say a couple of things, and we were trying to create a global nature, and we'd say a couple things, and there was this silence on the line, and you were like, oh goodness, there's a silence here. They're not understanding what we're saying. And they'd ask some questions in English, and English wasn't their primary language. And then all of a sudden the conversation would devolve into their native tongue. And it would be like all of this going back and forth. And I was not a speaker of their language. And I was like, what are you saying? And it's like really passionate speaking, and all of a sudden there'd be this silence, and they would go, okay. And I would be like, whoa, wait a minute. You had a 5-minute, really intense back and forth on a business process, and it was clear there wasn't universal alignment.
Mm-hmm.
So telling me okay at the end of that kind of sort of isn't okay for me, because if we're not on the same page, I know what'll happen. We'll go into testing, and we might even get through testing, and then we'll get into production, and it won't work. And the business process will fail, and then we'll have a huge mess on our hands. So coming back to why I think that this is complex, there's a lot going on. So as we're going to talk about and get into in the next few minutes. So
cool.
Great.
Yeah. So I think one thing that made it very interesting for me also to have this discussion with you, because Goran and I, we're based out of Germany, so we are very much focused on the European market. I think there we have a very good understanding of what's happening. But I think in the US, there are some differences. And I think one very important topic that is currently top of mind for a lot of customers is this notion cloud versus on-premise. So when you look, and I think in the US, the situation is fairly different. And we see this also actually from a pure Microsoft perspective, I would say. But what's your take on the cloud adoption in the US with the ASUG customers?
So let me start with a provocative statement that I think my friends at DSAG might quibble with me over. And I'm going to say the following: it's a cloud-based world. We live in a cloud world. However, I do foundationally believe that customers should have a choice of where they want to reside in that cloud-based world. I think it's fine for them to want to be on-prem. I think it's fine for them to want to be hybrid. And I think it's fine for them to be completely in the cloud. I would love to have customers have choice about which environments they believe are the best suited for their business needs. I believe that in my core. And I believe that it is a cloud-based world. We're moving to a cloud-based world. So while I want to give that choice, I also recognize that innovation, technology adoption is going to happen first and foremost in a cloud-based world. And it's not just SAP that's saying that. Almost every single other technology vendor partner is doing the same thing. So as an example, let's talk about Microsoft. I'm a huge fan of Office 365. And I think Microsoft has done a tremendous job in moving its customers in a pretty seamless way, for the most part, to Office 365. It's a cloud-based product, and I love it. And when I need it, I can use Excel on the web. I can also open up the app on my Mac and use it natively. I think that's a great example of a hybrid environment. And I believe and I know that I'm probably, if I'm going to want to use the latest and greatest features of Excel, I need to be part of that cloud-based world. And eventually, if they're successful, they will eventually make it into my on-prem environment, my Excel on my laptop. And I think that's the way I think about SAP. I think if you're a customer and you want to really run on-prem, please do understand that you may not have access to the latest and greatest innovations. And I have spent a lot of time over the past 4, 5, 6 weeks, ever since SAP's Q2 earnings call, where they made this really, important statement, which they started talking about here in Orlando at Sapphire, about it being a cloud-first technology. And again, I don't debate SAP on it, but I do believe that customers should have choice. But that choice also has risks. And so if you're a customer and you really want to be on-prem, that's fine. Just understand that you may have a challenge getting to the latest and greatest innovation. And if you're good with that, I think that's good.
Yeah.
And I actually think this comparison with Office 365 is something that resonates extremely well with me, actually, because I think, as you said, and at that time I actually was at SAP, not at Microsoft. So I watched from the outside when Microsoft started with this migration from on-prem or from the classic Office, I don't know, 2013 to Office 365. And I thought that this was a bold move. It was a very interesting, and I think a lot of customers were also not very happy originally. Also, a lot of partners were not very happy. But in the end, and what we see right now, for example, with AI, and we can talk about AI in a second as well. But all the things that we're currently doing with this Copilot integration in Microsoft 365, I think this is something that is very hard to do on-prem. In the cloud. Yeah. Honestly, also with the subscription module and with all the compute that we have that we need to make this working. I mean, that's something where it's just makes sense to have this innovation in Microsoft 365. So I can understand a lot of customers, and I agree with you. Yeah, I definitely think so that there are requirements to have still services on-prem. There are requirements to have on-prem functionalities. So we'll see how this works out. But I think.
But I guess it's important to understand what's the benefit of the cloud. So basically, that the customers are motivated by itself, not pushed by someone, but actually motivated to do it, right? So you mentioned as an example innovation. I mean, you get just much faster new stuff, right? As an example. So what would be some other kind of, in your perspective and motivational argument, why to go also for the cloud? In addition, what would be versus the on-premise? Of course, on-premise is nothing wrong, but.
So I'm going to use a Microsoft example again, and then I'm gonna come around. So as a CIO, and like I said, I've been the CEO of ASUG for 9 years, so my CIO skills are just a tiny bit rusty, and I'm okay with that. But when I was a CIO and a CIO of a multi-billion-dollar organization, and at the time, Office 365 was not available, so we did what everyone else did. We ran Outlook on-prem in our data centers. And once or twice every year, Outlook would go down, right? For various different reasons. And the tech team would show up in my office and I'd say, Outlook went down. And they go, yep. And I said, it was about a 4 or 5 hour outage. And they'd be like, yep, we've got this figured out and Outlook will never go down again. And I looked at them and I said, you've said that to me for a number of years. Yes. And while I believe you that for those particular reasons, Outlook will never go down again, it'll go down for some other reason. And we will still be once or twice a year dealing with a massive enterprise-wide outage. Nothing made me happier when Microsoft began offering Office 365 and Outlook in the cloud, because guess what? This is now your problem. Yeah. You will make sure that Outlook stays up all the time. And I think for the most part, Microsoft, you guys have done a great job at that. And I believe that one of the things of why cloud is, as we move down this road, do we as customers really want to run our own metal in our own data centers, in our own, with our own personnel, managing skills that are very important, but aren't necessarily core to what the business needs to do. Yeah. And those skills are harder to find, and those individuals are more likely to want to go to work for hyperscalers like Azure than they are to want to work at a local organization. Yeah. And I think that's super important. My wife happens to work for a small public accounting firm, and they decided that they didn't want to be on the cloud, and they wanted to put all their stuff on a server sitting in a closet in their office. And we've all been in these situations. And what would happen? Server would go down, someone would have to get in their car at midnight and go reboot it, and it was clunky. And I thought of all the people that should be on the cloud, this is an organization that should be, and they didn't get it. And I was like, but I think you lose the ability to be innovative. I think we use this word innovation, and I think innovation as a word is in the eye of the beholder. SAP has said, well, if you want to take advantage of our innovation, you need to be in the cloud. Great. Well, tell me what your innovation is. And then as a business, I can make a determination whether that's innovation that I do want to adopt because it has business advantages to me, or innovation that I go, that's good, but it's really not that important. Someone else can play with it. And I think we use this word innovation, and I would like to get into a more directed conversation about exactly what are we talking about? Exactly how does a customer take advantage of that, and is it worthwhile to them, and does it have a business case? So if I'm going to invest that kind of money in innovation, does it have a payoff? And when we talk about SAP, we have to talk about it in kind of three chunks: the licensing component, the component of the partner ecosystem, helping to implement that, because almost all of this requires some level of partner engagement, because most SAP customers can't do it by themselves. They need someone helping them. And then finally, the change management aspects internally to get it over the finish line. And when you add all that cost stuff together, it's expensive. And we got to make sure that there's a business value to it. So I believe, coming back to your original question, if I was a CIO today running a reasonably sized technology organization, I might have my stuff on-prem, but I think long-term, I'm fighting a losing battle. Yep. I'm in a situation where it will get progressively harder for me to maintain that. And unless there's a super compelling reason why not to, I think I should. I happen to think that you as Microsoft and on Azure, Google Cloud, AWS, and if we get outside of North America and we can talk about Ollie and the others, I generally think you guys are going to do a better job managing operating systems, managing networks, and managing the biggest issue, security.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Over time than I'm going to do as a CIO in an organization. I just think that's the way it's going to be. When I think about most IT organizations, and when I talk to CIOs, who I talk to multiple times a day, every day, we're not as connected as we can be, right? We all leave kind of sheltered lives, working and thinking and worrying about the things that are happening inside our organizations. We don't get out enough. And it's hard to get out if your day is consumed with these internal operating problems.
Yeah.
That's why I think some of this makes sense.
Yeah, I think for many European customers, especially on the beginning of this cloud journey, security was always a huge concern. It was also a concern for the Microsoft, for the American customer, of course, but somehow they handle it easier. However, it seems now in these days, kind of security is a reason to go to the cloud.
I think it is.
Yeah, because simply you can't, you as a even no matter how big company you are, it's hard, as you mentioned, it's hard to get the people, hard to get the skills. I always hear, customer who move to Azure, we are producing Kiwi, we don't want to handle with the technology. It's not, we are dealing with Kiwi production, not technology, so
right.
Do it.
And I think that, and you touched on it a few moments ago, in a world where AI is becoming more and more prevalent and people are able to write code faster, which means they can execute it faster, the attacks are going to become more sophisticated. I mean, we all think about AI for good. AI can also be for bad. So those people out in the world who want to do us harm are also going to use these tools to do us harm. And I think as those attacks become progressively more sophisticated, having Microsoft, Google, Amazon in your back pocket who are dealing with this at scale is a better outcome than you trying to deal with it on your own, because you're never going to be fully patched. You're not going to be keeping up with it. The skills of your team are not going to be top notch, and that's going to be hard. That's why I think cloud makes sense. Now, there's things about cloud that I have concerns about. I have concerns about cloud economics, right? The problem and the challenge as customers in moving to a cloud-based world where you're spending monthly fees to run this stuff is, I grew up and many of my peers grew up in an environment where this was all fixed-based cost, right? So I could control in my data center when I did a hardware refresh, and hardware refreshes were very expensive. But if the business had economic challenges and I needed to kick the can for a year, I could get away with it.
Yep.
Cloud is a little bit harder to do that, right? It's a little harder. Those economics are a little harder, and it's a little harder to turn stuff off, right? You know, once people get used to all of this and the cost model goes up, it's very difficult to say, well, you know, you don't really need that. Let's just turn that off. And so I don't know that I would necessarily lay that at the feet of Microsoft and the rest to deal with. But from a customer perspective, I think long-term cloud economics are going to be a significant issue because it's much more difficult to control that continual cost escalation.
Yeah, I guess this is bringing a kind of new aspects of operating the whole stuff in an optimum cost way.
Yeah.
So generally on premise, okay, you oversize the stuff just to be on the safe side and you don't care. And then after hardware refresh, okay, you get the new hardware, right? But here you have a potential to save. So, I mean, probably, I don't know how do you see it, but I think this is a kind of a mind shift for the SAP folks, how to operate in the cloud in the most optimal way. So do you see as a kind of challenge from the ASUG
I see it as a huge challenge, you know, and you know, coming back to our beginning conversation on cloud, right? And we have a number of slides to share today, right? I'm looking at the first one. We talk about complexity, right? There are 5 different clouds in this particular chart, right? On-prem, private cloud, hybrid cloud, managed private cloud, public cloud. Think about the knowledge base as a customer you have to make those architectural decisions about which one makes sense, when does it make sense, and over a period of time, where do you want to be? Those are hard choices. And, you know, so that to me is complexity, right? You know, it's not just one size fits all. You got to think about where do you want to be with all of them. And we haven't even touched yet, you know, the notion of SAP running on a private cloud environment and a public cloud. I mean, we could probably spend episode 160, 161, 162, 190 on some of those, you know, kind of nuances of how do you manage private versus public versus hybrid. And, you know, well beyond the scope of what we have to play with today. But that, to me, comes back to some of the questions that you guys are asking.
Yeah. So for me, one very big challenge right now that SAP needs to go through basically is to break with this traditional, I've always done it like this. So customers are used to run on premise for years, for 50 years, as we just talked about. I mean, SAP has been around for a very long time. So I, as a customer, I'm just used to it. If you, for example, compare this to Concur or to SuccessFactors, which are cloud-based solutions, I, as a customer, already benefit from these software as a service solutions that SAP provides me. And I'm sure over time, we'll see the very same thing also for an S/4HANA, that customers really see the benefits of a cloud-based solution on this. So I think we'll get there. And similar with, again, coming back to Microsoft, if we look at Microsoft 365, I think it was also not you just turned a switch and then everyone was on Office 365. It took some time to get there. And I think that's what we're also seeing with SAP.
I think you're making a very good point. In the last 50 years, SAP has done an expert job and been phenomenal at creating software that runs the business of businesses, right?
Exactly.
But here's the good thing. When they were done writing the software, they handed it off to the customer and said, here's your software, go do. And customers said, great, got it. I can configure it. I can customize it. I own that piece. SAP, you do the software manufacturing. I'll do the software utilization. This has become muddied, right? So Rise with SAP is an offering where now SAP is saying, I'm going to operate the software on your behalf. Microsoft has done something similar with Office 365, but I think with Office 365, you haven't taken the next step and said, you know what? I know in that Excel spreadsheet you have, you've got all this VBA code written, all these functions running, all this VBA code written, and you know what? We're going to manage that for you too. I mean, you as Microsoft haven't done that, right? And I've been around Microsoft a long time, and I know how to write VBA code. I would never hand that off to anyone. I'm surprised most of my VBA code runs at all, and there's no one who can run it better than me. And that I think is a different, and I think where SAP still has room to grow, and it's going to be a journey with them, is their ability to operate the software that they've manufactured for 50 years as easily and coherently as the customer base has. And that's where there is some friction in this right now, is that, you know, when I speak to customers, they understand and they agree with cloud, but they don't believe that SAP, and by the way, SAP can't, because there's 50 years of operating experience inside customers.
Yep.
They know what they're doing. And so I think that there's still opportunity here and growth to happen where SAP can be as good at operating its software as it's been in creating it. And they're very different skills.
Yeah.
Yep. But it's a learning curve. And
it's
and
a
I
learning
think
curve.
we talked about RISE, similar with GROW. I think that's also a very fresh, a new approach for new customers where there is just this software as a service functionality. I'm sure there are hiccups, similar like on the Microsoft side. That's just part of the business. But I also definitely see the value of these services that are offered to customers.
Yeah, I think that if we long-term as customers can operate less and innovate more, if more of this software becomes plug and play, I can bring this module in, I can bring this module in, and I can actually think about off-the-shelf, pre-configured business processes, I can make a lot of headway. Now, that's easy to say, right? But I've also got, you know, most SAP customers, I might have hundreds, if not thousands, of finance professionals in my organization who have a very different notion of how they want a business process to work. So I might come to them as a technology professional and say, here's the best way to do AP. And it's out of the box, SAP ready to go. I don't have to throw a lot of switches. I don't have to hire a lot of system integrators to make all of the customizations. Here you go. And they may look at that and go, yeah, that's not the way we do business.
Yeah.
And no, you can't do that. And I think that's where some of this other tension, you know, arises in that. Yeah, but by the way, I think there has to be a cost benefit done. Back to your point, just because that's the way we've always done it as a business doesn't mean that's the way I should continue.
Yeah. Cool. So when we'll talk about this integration and touch points in a second as well, how I can customize my system. But before we go there, I mean, we talked now a lot about SAP. We talked a lot about Microsoft 365. So when we look at the partnership between Microsoft and SAP, can you, I mean, from an ASUG perspective, can you share a little, when you look from outside, I mean, again, Goran and I, we're in our Microsoft bubble, obviously, and we work with SAP all the time. But from an ASUG perspective, what's your view on the partnership between SAP and Microsoft?
My view on the partnership is it's incredibly strong, and as we as customers need it to be incredibly strong. The vast majority, when we look at our research, ASUG research, you know, the biggest percentage of customers are running SAP on some sort of Microsoft Azure platform. Mm-hmm. And so that, and then followed by AWS, and then followed by Google Cloud. So that partnership needs to be strong. It's also my belief that the vast majority of SAP customers are also Microsoft customers, right? So they tend to use both. In my career, I was both a Microsoft customer and an SAP customer. And they kind of were like, two ships passing in the night. As we move down the road together, the ability, when you guys talk about Copilot, when we talk about Teams, right? When we talk about, a vast change that's happened in our computing lives, remote work, the pandemic, all of those things, bringing these tool sets closer together has immense benefit and value. I do believe that I love Excel. I do a lot of work in Excel, but every time data comes out of an enterprise package like SAP and goes into Excel, it runs the risk of it being corrupted in some way, shape, or form. Outdated, all of that, right? So to the ability for that to be seamless is really important. And there's been lots of work that Microsoft has done over time in those areas. I still don't think it's as simple as it could be. And the simpler we can make it to make that work well, to make those things, flow well, I think has huge opportunity and value to the customer base.
And I think that's a perfect bridge to the next, I think, one really crucial topic, and that's the integration. Integration between SAP and Microsoft, obviously. And I think Excel is actually a beautiful example for this, because if I look, for example, at the SAP Analytics Cloud, there is a dedicated add-in for Excel. So that from Excel, because as you said, a lot of people just love the way to work with Excel. They know the formulas, they know how to navigate in Excel, and now they need to have live, true, real data access to the SAP system. And that's, I think, for example, where this SAP Analytics Cloud add-in for Excel comes in, where I really have always the integration can always be better, but I think there is already a fairly good integration between SAP Analytics Cloud and Excel. So when we look at in general on the integration topics, what do you see there?
On the integration topics, I think you spelled it out perfectly. Integration is never going to go away. And if anything, I would say it's another area when we talk about complexity, there's more systems involved than there ever have been in the past related to dealing with and moving data into SAP and pulling data out, right? And I don't think integration is something that's ever going to get smaller. It's only going to continue to proliferate. And when you think about all of these cloud-based solutions that your business partners want to leverage and use, I want the base of this to be SAP. I firmly believe that SAP should be the system of record for enterprise data. And therefore, integration of moving that data out into other systems when necessary and bringing it in is critical. And that has to work flawlessly. You brought up at the top of our conversation today, artificial intelligence. Much like cloud. So, I think about 3 seismic shifts in IT in the time I've been in my career. The internet being the first, cloud being the second, artificial intelligence is the third. Now, we're on the very early stages of it, right? So when I think about artificial intelligence and I let my mind wander and dream, what I think about is a future where I can use artificial intelligence to tell me, hey, here are all the spreadsheets in my enterprise. Here's how that data is being changed. And this is how that data needs to come back into SAP and be part of the enterprise, right? I mean, unfortunately today, I think one of the challenges is most of that is a one-way street, right? It comes out of SAP, it goes into Excel spreadsheets, it's changed, it's modified, new formulas are added, brilliant work is done. But no one ever says, you know what, I need to put that back into SAP somehow. That loop doesn't happen very often. And when it does, most line of business professionals have learned, but the last thing you do is go to your IT organization with another project and say, hey, I got a project for you. It's brilliant. It's amazing. And they say, great, let's add it to our list of 5,000 that we're trying to work through, right? So I think our line of business peers have learned if it's not a really big deal, don't talk to IT about it. And I think that's where I think down the road, AI can help tremendously. If AI can be used to kind of watch the enterprise, and I think about what you guys are doing with Copilot, and again, really early days, and I am way out in front of my skis on this. Early days, but if we can use things like Copilot to help understand how this data is being used and how it's being changed, and then come back to IT and say, hey, by the way, here's the data elements and the things you're missing inside the enterprise that if you put it in SAP would save you hundreds, if not thousands of hours. I think that would be super cool. But again, what's it predicated on? You're in a cloud environment, right? You're using cloud services because AI in an on-prem world is not going to work. And that's how you do it. That's so anyway. What do I
love that what you just said. And I think for me that's this combination of integration, AI. That's something where we'll see some amazing things, because as you said, the SAP system is the system of record. That's where I have my enterprise, my business data. But at the same time, I also have a lot of extremely valuable data in emails, in my Word documents, in my Excel documents, in my PowerPoints. And they, in a lot of cases, they are stored on OneDrive for Business. So
Yep.
if now we can have an AI that has access to both this data that where we as Microsoft are currently already working on, so on the Copilot to integrate or to access the data on your OneDrive, on your business documents and so on, and then at the same time we can access the data on the SAP system and combine that. I think that's where we'll see some absolutely amazing new things. You probably saw at Sapphire where we showed the SuccessFactors Copilot integration, where we already showed where SAP and Microsoft, where we worked very closely together to bring this collaborative world of Word and the Copilots together with the HR world with SuccessFactors. I think that was just a very first glimpse of what will come when we continue down this road of infusing AI in these integrations of data from SAP and the Microsoft side.
I was at a conference earlier this week, and I heard a quote that I'm still in the process of digesting, but I found it to be really compelling. And what this speaker said is, you never play the game as well as you practice it. Mm-hmm. And I'm still trying to kind of digest that a little bit, and I'm thinking about it. And if I think about, football, whether it's European soccer or American football, we're not going to get into that conversation today. But when I think about professional sports, I think there might be an argument to be made that you practice typically better than you play. Because in the play environment, there's so many more factors in play that you can't anticipate. And why this individual said that is they were making a case. Today is the day to start practicing with AI.
Oh, nice.
Even though it may not be ready for prime time use, the quicker you get out there and practice, the faster you'll be ready to play. And I think on the surface, as I said, I'm still digesting the quote. I think on the surface, I buy in.
You know what? I very much agree with that. And I have to say, I had a change of mind there, because when we started to talk about AI, I was lucky in my position as a product manager on the Microsoft side to really focus on the AI topics. And in a lot of cases that I saw, I thought, well, this is not an AI case. This is completely stupid what you're doing there. You could do this in a much more easier if then else, and then you could fix it. But then I had I started to work with a customer, with a global customer, and they were basically saying, look, we want to play or practice with AI now, and we know that 80% of the scenarios that we'll practice will be completely stupid. There will be no value. But the remaining 20% and the things that we learn while doing this, they will completely change our company. And that's when I thought, well, okay, well, maybe it does make sense to also play and do some stupid things with AI, because that's the only way how you get your hands dirty, how you learn how to do it. So in the meantime, if anyone is doing something with AI, I'm all for it. Just play with it. Just test it out and then see what's happening.
I agree 100%. You will both be pleased to know that yesterday afternoon, I run on my Mac. I run Windows 11 in a Parallels shell.
Yeah.
And I got it all upgraded, and I turned on Windows 11 Copilot, and I started playing with it yesterday afternoon. And it's still, like you said, it's early days, it's preview. And I was intrigued that, there's some things that I hadn't thought about. Like I typed into Copilot, what's the weather today? And it gave me a good answer back. I didn't have to jump into an app, right? It suggested to me, and I think over time in the OS, I am in a constant fight with Windows on my Mac about screen resolution and scale, right? It wants to scale at something. It must think I'm an 80-year-old blind person because like the font is massive. And I'm like, no, I can actually, I've been staring at a screen for so many years, and I'm so farsighted, I can see really small stuff close up. And I said, change the scale. And it looked like in some of the Copilot, you were actually able to type a sentence and it would do that work behind the scenes.
Nice.
Right? If you said, hey, you know, do this or that. Now scaling isn't there yet, but you know, but it did tell me how to change it. I thought, you know, there's some really good application here for both user experience. I mean, I'm at an age now where I know I forget, I know I can do something. I may forget how to do it.
Yeah.
And right. And so, you know, to have those little reminders along the way that aren't, you know, super basic has been really good. I think that's a lot of cases of where AI could potentially go. I know we wandered into the AI topic before both of you were ready. But yeah, I happen to be pretty optimistic about AI. I think we've got a long way to go. We are early days.
Yeah,
it's
I don't know. Have you seen? I mean, that's a more Holger loving topic of also, as an example, low code, no code.
Yep.
As in one value. But however, when we talk about the AI, you know, we had a few weeks back a session where the guy showed us how he used AI to generate the code for integration with SAP. So SAP code. So basically he gave, okay, this is the SAP table, and he gave explanation. She just copy, you know, those German sentences of what does it mean, the fields. And he says, okay, give me those datas. And the AI would create an ABAP code, which would be, of course, fitted to the need and fetch the data. So I was like, wow.
Last night, I was playing around with a long speech that someone had given, and I had a transcript of it, and it had the timestamps in it, and they weren't terribly helpful. So I've been fiddling around with Python, and so I said, I really need, how do I get these timestamps out of this file? And it wasn't really going to work well in Word. I was thinking there's got to be a simpler way to do this. So it wasn't really going to work well in Word. I didn't think I could bring it into Excel. And I'm like, you know what? I've been playing around a little bit with Python, but I'm not good at Python. So I went into you know, an AI window, and I said, write me a Python module that eliminates colons in this file. Because the only colons were the timestamps. And it spat back out the Python 25 lines of Python code to do this. I literally copied it, pasted, made a couple changes. I was smart enough to know where to make the changes, put it into the Python window, pressed enter, and all the colons were gone out of the text file. Now, it was an R&D experiment for me. It took me probably half an hour to do it, but I was learning along the way. And I was thinking back to your point about ABAP code or Python or Swift or whatever. You know, oh my goodness, you know, that's an example of where I could save a ton of time. Now, unfortunately, I learned nothing about Python. All I learned is how to use an AI tool to generate Python code, but it got me where I needed to go. And then I found out that the AI, what I was really trying to get the AI tool to summarize the speech, it only goes for so long. And so I need much bigger AI engines that can, you know, process 50 pages worth of someone's you know, speech, so I can be lazy and not have to actually listen to it. But it was all good, right? And this is where we go. I took you way off field. My apologies.
No, and I think that's perfect, because I think you just outlined you don't need to know and write Python to accomplish a certain task. And
I need to respect it. But I need to respect it, right, Holger? I hear you. I need to respect it, though. And that's, I think, what I worry about in AI is people will lose the respect for it.
Correct.
They'll get to the they'll take the shortcut to the answer without appreciating what's going into it.
Yeah, but I want to come back to a quick statement that you made before, like when you talked about going to IT and asking them, well, can you do this? Can you develop this to get the data back to the SAP system? And you said, no, well, yeah, we'll put this on the list of our 5,000 existing projects. I think that's another area where AI and specifically low code can really help empower the end users, because I, as a business user, I know the problem. I can articulate the problem. Similar like what you just said. I want to get rid of the colons. So I have the challenge that I need to format my data, or I need to get access to my sales order, something like that. And if I can articulate the problem, then with AI and low code, potentially, I'm not saying we're there yet. And I mean, I think with the Power Platform, with Copilot, we have some huge steps forward already, but it's still not perfect. But if I think down I don't know, a year from now or 2 years from now, I think there's a lot of potential that we can really empower the business user with this combination of low code and AI to address a lot of problems by themselves, so that they don't need to always bother IT. Can you do this? Can you do that? And IT can focus on some other task, obviously. And I, as the business user, I can just get the things done that I need. I mean, obviously there are a lot of things like what's the governance process, what am I allowed to do, and do we build a shadow IT again and stuff like that. But I think there is a huge potential to empower the business user with AI and low code.
I have written a couple of Power Automate scripts.
Perfect.
My experience is this, and by the way, they're in SharePoint, and we go against a SharePoint list, and it modifies it. And here's my view. Low code, no code. Even with that, Power Automate is not something I would hand off to someone who doesn't really understand IT. Right? It's a massive step forward, but it's not consumer grade. Right? It's an amazing tool, but I think, if I think about it, I would not think that my assistant is at a skill level where she would be able to write Power Automate scripts. However, I believe low code, no code, coming back to the 1,000 project backlog, if IT can actually start to accelerate that backlog, because they can use low code, no code, they can use these tools to write the solutions faster, I think we've got something there. If we can even if we can, I believe in low code, no code. If we can use low code, no code to make the IT organization more efficient, faster at what it does, we've won.
Yeah.
If that 1,000 project backlog can go down to 800 or 500, that's a huge opportunity. That's why I think AI. I'm not convinced that this conversation about AI is going to eliminate jobs. I'm not there yet, because I think it does things better, but it's not something that you can say, well, I can replace you with AI. If I can make you more efficient, if I can make you get things done faster, if I can make us as an organization produce better products with better quality because I'm using these tools to help augment it, that's a massive win.
So, Geoff, we have already taken a lot of your valuable time. So
and we got through 2 of your questions.
Exactly, unfortunately, but honestly, I really loved the discussion where we won't. But to somehow wrap it up, what's next with ASUG? What are the next activities? So I learned that you will be in Bremen, which is fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to meeting you.
You
there
say Bremen, I say Bremen. See, this example of language barriers. Yeah. So SAP Tech Ed is coming around the corner. It's going to be in Bangalore, India, in early November. We in North America are going to be doing what we are calling ASUG Tech Connect. It is the in-person sidecar to Tech Ed. We're doing it in partnership with SAP. SAP is providing Tech Ed in Bangalore with a virtual component. That's a Thursday, Friday here in North America. On Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of the following week in New Orleans, Louisiana. If you're from these spots, Nolans, Louisiana, we will be doing an in-person ASUG Tech Connect. Jürgen Mueller, SAP CTO, will be with us. Gentlemen, today we talked about cloud. We talked about hybrid landscapes. We talked about Azure. We talked about AI. Front and center of what I think SAP is going to want to talk about. And we didn't even get to Clean Core. We didn't spend a ton of time today on BTP. We talked about Rise and Grow. We got those checked off. We didn't get into any detail. That's an experience where I think most SAP customers, if you are in North America, I encourage you to be part of that conversation. It's going to be incredibly important. If you are part of the German-speaking user group DSAG, you should be in Bremen in a couple weeks. This is moving so fast. And what I'm saying, again, speed continues to accelerate. Your ability to get out from behind your screens and spend a little bit of time thinking about what's being talked about, how to apply these tools will do immense value to you as a professional in SAP, as well as ultimately your organization. And I think that's why user communities exist and why I'm excited about the future ahead.
But Geoff, I quickly want to thank you also for
Thank
really
you.
making this ASUG Tech Connect happening, because I know when SAP talked about we will only have an on-site TechEd in Bangalore, there was a lot of frustrations, honestly, in the user community in Europe, in the US, and I think it's fantastic that ASUG is doing this, because I think there is a requirement for folks to come together, not only virtual, but really to have a coffee together, to have lunch together, to pass each other while walking from one session to the other. So I think it's really good that ASUG is doing this.
And I think, we as ASUG have a strong, deep partnership with SAP. That partnership and that trust that we have with each other is what allows us to do these things, because this has SAP's full endorsement. Over 50%
Perfect.
of the content that's being delivered in New Orleans will be delivered by SAP. So, and the 32% will be delivered by customers. And 16% by partner. I'm off by a couple percentage points. Please forgive me.
Okay.
But I think that trust in our relationship, our commitment as ASUG to say we want customers to be vibrant members of this community, to be, on an SAP platform, to be using and getting benefit from the software for decades to come, is why we work so well together.
Perfect. Well, Geoff,
I hope you guys will welcome me back at some point. I don't want to get to episode 330 of your
we have
podcast
so many
and
topics.
you see me again.
Yeah, we have so many topics. We didn't have a time, so we are counting on you.
Anytime. I'm happy to come back and spend time with both of you. Maybe once we get through TechEd season, we can chat about what we heard, what we learned.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Yeah,
that would be really great. Yeah. I know we didn't cover all the things that we discussed or that we wanted to in our or in our preparation to this call, but honestly, I really enjoyed our discussion. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. This is wonderful.
Really
I appreciate it.
Pleasure, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Bremen then.
I will see both of you in Bremen, hopefully. I'll see a lot of other people too. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you all.
Perfect.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.